Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with stars Patricia Clarkson and Sir Ben Kingsley from the film Learning to Drive, moderated by Access Hollywood's Scott Mantz, recorded at the Landmark West LA.
Lovely to see you.
Okay, so I have to say, I talk about just a passion project. Patricia, this is something that you've been championing for a long, long time. Take us back to when this first started for you, and what was it about the story that just resonated with you?
I joke that when I first was involved with this project, I was an ingenue. But no, I loved this essay in the New Yorker by Katha Pollitt, and serendipitously, I found out they were making a film of it. I was given the script. I was over the moon and thrilled and attached to make this movie, and that was about 9 years ago. But through many twists and turns, the remarkable and incomparable Sir Ben Kingsley became attached, and Isabel Quachette, and great producers, Broad Green, our extraordinary Daniel Hammond and Gabriel Hammond came on board, and suddenly everything came into place, and we got to make this film.
Now, you were making the film Elegy when things really did start to come together,
Yes.
and the same director, same stars. So like, how did you? Ben, how did you get involved? Remember the conversation the first time you read the character of Darwin, and what it was about Darwin that really hit you?
Oh, the first time I read it, I'm afraid I said that I'm not ready to play this guy. I had recently done a film called The House of Sand and Fog, and I was deeply... Thank you. Well, as you very kindly remember, I was deeply immersed in the plight of the immigrant who also left Persia, Iran, under terrible circumstances. And I had to give myself some breathing space. There is, I think, a part of the actor's inner fiber that is exhaustible. And if you mine the same vein over and over again, and I had done a run of deeply tragic characters, and I needed someone who was empowered by life, not disempowered. So honestly, I had to wait 2 or 3 years. It came back to my life again, and the molecules had realigned, and I was ready to come on board. Thank goodness I had another chance, because very often when a film is involved, if you don't get on board, you've missed the boat. But fortunately, the great team of Patty, Isabel, whom we both adore unequivocally, and off we went, and I was able to join.
Well, I was doing my research on this, and the character of Darwin was something that I understand that while you were doing you had heard some stories post 9/11 about taxi drivers in New York, Sikhs who had been selfless in their will to help people who needed it.
Well, I heard it, I think, not from a Sikh, but from a New Yorker who was on the Broadwalk when we were filming those lovely scenes with the ice cream and the popsicle. I think that's what the scene was about, wasn't it? It wasn't about anything deep. It was about popsicles and ice cream.
I think it was about popsicles.
Anyway,
yes.
this lovely gentleman took time to tell me a story about the Sikh taxi drivers who in New York, after 9/11, turned off their meters, slowed down, wound their windows down and said, "Where do you want to go? For whom are you searching? Let me help you."
They took anyone throughout Manhattan,
throughout
where they
wonderful.
wanted to go. Yeah.
But that's typical. Honestly, there is something very consistent about the Sikh culture that this sounds like a generalization, but if you have met and spent time with one Sikh gentleman, you know them all.
Well, I just was also struck by how here are these two people who live in the same city, and they are worlds apart. And, that's so New York to begin with. could say that about any two people in New York, really, or Los Angeles for that matter. But just this isn't so much a question, but I just wanted to know your thoughts about just the way the barriers come down for both of them. They embrace each other's cultures and embrace friendship, really.
Well, I think what's essential to this story is that they are both in a part of their lives where the barriers are up. They've suffered, he has suffered truly catastrophic loss, and Wendy, in her own mind, it's catastrophic loss. But they are, Wendy has built, I think, a lot of walls around her, and that's part of the problem in her life. And then she meets this man that has really overcome some of the largest and most adverse things in life. And it's such an awakening. It's such a barrier-breaking moment. And but I think it's the beauty is that we would sit in this little car all day, this stinky little ratty car.
A nice car. I liked it.
Man. And we would sit there, but we really did have to keep the divide. But Ben and I are friends. I'm lucky to say. How cool is it that I've been friends with Sir Ben Kingsley? I'm the lucky gal. And so, but we had to keep ourselves separated.
Stayed in our bubble, didn't we?
We had to stay in our bubbles to preserve the integrity of the film, so that it could slowly break down. It could slowly dissolve.
I think that there's so many choices when you are creating a screenplay. The environment, the town. Supposing it was a farming community where the houses were miles apart. No, it's New York. Already you are thrust together in New York. There's no avoiding it. And then supposing it was that they meet in a park where you have acres of trees and grass and various park benches on which you can choose to sit. No, you have no choice. You're stuck together in a tiny, stinky, my colleague says, car. So, again, you have this intimacy is thrust upon them. Whether they choose it or not, it goes with the territory. Driving instructor, pupil. That's, you have to sit in the same vehicle. And it is New York. And all the neurotic and creative energy combined of New York, and contrast that with the choice of a Sikh, and therefore the Sikh temple, therefore the absolute island of calm and order and dignity and family and priorities and decency in the chaotic milieu of Queens and New York. And we did film in the temple. That was a Sikh temple. They allowed us in, and we had the most
everything you
day
see
there.
in the city is everywhere we are. When we're on top that Queensboro Bridge, we're on top that Queensboro Bridge. Every place we shot in New York was the real thing, which was essential to, and that was one of the reasons getting this film made was so difficult.
Your soundstage was the Big Apple.
Yes.
Yes. Wow.
Yes, it was.
When I saw one thing about covering a film festival, listen, it's really great, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but it's exhausting. I mean, I see 4 to 5 movies in a day for 5 or 6 straight days. Again, I am not complaining, but it's exhausting. And when I saw Learning to Drive at Toronto last year, I was struck by the beauty, how profound it was. And I was also struck, Patricia, Wendy just goes through the ringer in this movie. I mean, it's such a soul-bearing, it's such a vulnerable, just bare your soul and your heart performance. The scene that really struck me the most was when Wendy tries one last time to just, capture the magic with her husband. And I wanted to just ask you just about how hard it was to really go there repeatedly throughout this movie.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I wouldn't give up on this film is I loved the journey of Wendy. I loved, my generation has reaped the benefits of our mothers, the sacrifices and the burdens our mothers had to go through, and we are a generation. I am the generation of the first real generation, I think, that of women. I'm 55. And look at how high my heels are. But we have it all. I mean, this is what I loved about Wendy is this is a fiercely intelligent woman at the top of her game, a book critic. She's often the smartest woman in the room. Who wouldn't want to be married to Jake Weber? Who wouldn't want a beautiful daughter like Grace Gummer? She has it all, and she lets it go. She forgets to look up, and all the metaphors of driving play into that. But what I loved about Wendy is just the writing of Sarah and the kernel of Katha Pollitt is that incredibly quick. It's that witty. It's tragic and comic simultaneously. It'll kill you as an actor, but it's challenging. It's a real challenge. And I didn't want to sacrifice any of that. I didn't want to sacrifice the humor. I didn't want to sacrifice the pathos. So, this part ate my lunch every day. It was just like, because it had to. But I had Isabel. I had, the best actors in the world. I had to straddle Jake Weber. Come on. But it was what I loved about the story, and that's what I wanted to try my best to preserve, was I thought the beauty and the integrity of the writing and the witty and the sharp and the dull and the high and the low and the wide and the intimate simultaneously.
But where Wendy sort of shows her emotions, I feel like Darwin is more guarded.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's like, and that's almost like it has challenges in itself to play someone is hurting and is vulnerable, but is still composed.
Again, I think it's a really lovely choice by the creative team that this man does come from a stoic, masculine society, probably patriarchal, and in order to let the current flow between these two extraordinary characters, you do need your positive connection and your negative connection. You do need that difference for the electricity to flow. And we are, in many ways, although we share the common bond of loss and suffering and trauma in our mature years, we deal with it in different ways. And I think we learn from one another how there is a middle way, not to let the bubbles merge and blend and melt a little bit. Yeah. I really enjoyed playing Darvan because when you have an opportunity to aspire towards something in your character that's greater than that part of you, it's really quite beautiful. And to have him assaulted by racists, and to get up and get back into his car, show his credentials to the policeman, and then drive to meet his arranged marriage, is remarkably controlled. But I think that comes historically from generations of Sikh behavior, the Sikh way. So I would suppose his motto in Punjabi would be "do the right thing." And those are wonderful people to play, and sometimes that's a killingly difficult
Just a
choice.
side note, so, this was a very long journey in my life, but maybe one of the many moments, but one that is most indelible for me when we started this process was in the makeup trailer for the first time to see Sir Ben and his beautiful turban. And I looked over and I thought, oh, we're here.
Yeah.
We're going to shoot this film.
Wow.
This is beautiful. He looked so extraordinary. And it brought such tears to my eyes. It's still. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. Yeah.
And now here you are, opening day.
Wow, yes.
You're here.
Opening day. Who's today?
It's today.
It's
today.
Yeah.
It happened. Here we
Yeah.
are.
Wonderful.
Sold out crowd. But I just want to say to the sold out crowd, how great to have a movie for grown-ups.
Yes.
Come on. I'm so glad the summer is like over and we can get back to like some depth, characters we care about, characters we can relate to. But I feel like the response that this movie is getting and the fact that everyone is here tonight, you know, what this audience that doesn't get enough service, as you know, like everyone here, you know, movies for grown-ups. I mean, like, why don't we see more of these kind of movies?
I actually think grown-ups start younger. I mean, this is a movie with middle-aged people and maybe something, but I also, you know, like my niece saw this film, and you know, she's 30, and she was like, "No, Aunt Patty, this is like, I understand this. I get this. I know this. This is my mother."
Totally relatable. I want to open up the questions to the audience, but I just want to ask, in terms of what was I going to ask? Darn it! I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. The production schedule, because I'm guessing it was pretty quick.
It was 25 shooting days.
25?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wasn't it 5 weeks?
Everybody's like, whoa.
5 weeks.
Five.
And there were 5 day weeks. It was civilized. There weren't 6 day weeks. There were 25 shooting days.
25.
And Isabel manages her time exquisitely well. She doesn't waste a second. Every single thing the actor offers to the camera, Isabel operating it herself, is caught by her, by the editors, is in the movie. Everything we hoped she would catch a glimpse of is absolutely there. She's a very caring, brilliant director.
Yeah, she shoots in such a beautiful, it's such an organic process with Isabel. You know, like Soderbergh, she's the operator, but she has a very distinct style. You never are sure where the camera is, which is quite beautiful because it's not set up and staged, and she'll just start to roll, and, you know, she's like, she's Catalan. When you say she's Spanish, she goes Catalan. And she, you know, and every step of the way, she becomes integral to the scene because she's often in very intimate moments. And what I think gives her movies such intimacy is she is just so present and there, and she doesn't miss anything.
Wow. Did you shoot it in chronological order?
Not really, because of location availabilities and actor availabilities, we couldn't. But you know, that really does have its benefits because it forces you to closely examine the arc that you're exploring, and very often out of sequence is beneficial to the symphonic structure of the film. You know.
You had any input into the script as far as dialogue? Did you contribute to that, or was it straight on the page?
I don't know. I would imagine that Patricia's answer is more or less the same as mine, that I do have, for writing as good as this, I have a huge respect for the writer and for the effort that they've taken to take a piece of writing on the page, a short story, which is an internal experience for the reader, and externalize it for the viewer, is a terrific achievement. I thought the dialogue was beautiful. I don't recall changing a single word. I think I improvised a couple of lines with my nephew while I was cooking, but beyond that,
I think the most of what you see in the film, I'd say 95%. I mean, the tantric sex scene, there was a little bit of improv going on. Just try doing a scene like, just try a little, you're going to be improving.
The driving scenes were sort of harrowing or really brought out the feeling of, you know, a new driver in New York, first time. How were they done? Was the car always on a rig, or did you just have cameras mounted and you were just driving and going about it as each of you was driving?
Quite rarely on a rig. Now, Patricia, when you saw Patricia at the wheel, she was driving around
my
the
driving
city.
has lapsed, and so
I think it was a great gift to the actors. When you are literally absorbed in an action, it changes your performance, so that part of you is, as Darwan would say, completely concentrating on your on your environment, the highway, the freeway environment, and the rest of you is communicating with your passenger. So there's a division of attention, and the camera, I think Isabel caught that beautifully on camera. So
No,
yeah,
we didn't have the budget for a lot of big rigs, and so often I'd had a safety car in front or in back.
Oh, there you go.
You really felt that.
Oh.
You're
Good.
watching and driving as opposed to just like, oh, we can't.
No. I'd say 90% of the drive is me just driving through the city of New York or Queens or Far Rockaway. That's me.
The question was, while Ben was in character, did he get the kind of racism that the character got in the film? And that happened.
Yeah, in the beautiful, delicate scene and gorgeous scene, I actually didn't hear this, but I was told what the guys shouted from their vehicle. And when Wendy and I were buying the red car, it was a beautiful scene because it's the triumph of their friendship, and it's the almost the end of the first chapter, if you like, of their friendship. And apparently I was in the dealership, and apparently two chaps drove past in their vehicle and shouted, "He should be buying a fucking camel, not a fucking car."
Oh. Good God. Wow.
So, you
He's
think,
ignorant on all fronts.
you think, I'm really, really glad I'm playing this part because I'll get you for that.
Wow. Jeez.
Struck me, being from India, was the authenticity of the Sikh ethos that this movie has captured.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you. That's beautiful. You made my night.
Actually, I would like to know more about capturing the authenticity that he's talking about and just making it not feel like a stereotype almost, but making it feel genuine.
We were greeted every morning by Harpreet Singh Tour with his beautifully color-coordinated turban and tie. And he very quietly wound my turban on my head every morning. As you know, it's yards of material. And just by his wonderful quiet presence, dignity, and absolute commitment to sharing as much as he humanly possibly could of his culture with us, that was a wonderful way to start the day. And whenever we were working together, I have occasion to glance over to Harpreet, who was standing maybe behind the camera a few feet away, and I would sort of, and he that goes a long way for me. A couple of those that I can live for a long time on those. The Sikhs opened their temple to us. I lunched in Richmond Hill with them. I bought jewelry from a friend of Harpreet's for my darling wife. Patty's wearing one of them, a pair we bought for her. A lot to do with the gentle but urgent need for the Sikhs to say who they were through the film, and it was immensely valuable to us. Also, if I may quickly...
It was Isabel also.
Isabel, amazing.
Making sure to just
authenticity.
Keep it. It was absolutely, it was paramount to her that everything just be subtle, real, true. She has such a beautiful and discerning eye, the director, Isabel.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Sir Ben. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.